Hello, everyone. This is Erin, and today I'm going to try to recreate this piece of art by Lorelay Bove of Ursula. I have my acrylic gouache, I've got a flat head, a round head, I've got water, I've got acrylic, I've got paper towels, I've got yogurt lids, and breathe. I'm going to start by creating the purple background. And to make a nice true purple, you need a warm blue and a cool red. So I'm mixing together that primary magenta, which is a cool red, with the ultramarine blue, which is a warm blue, which means it's closer to red on the color wheel. And then I've got some white here, and the white that I'm using is acrylic. It's not gouache, although it says gouache on the bottle. That is a lie. It's just straight up acrylic. Whereas the acrylic gouache is closer to a traditional gouache. It just has a different binder, more chalk added, and once you activate it, once it's down on your canvas, it will dry and it will not be able to be reactivated. So mixing all these together to create this really nice true purple. Now, a couple of things right off the bat. First of all, I should mention that I'm having another paint night on Zoom. Everyone's welcome. It's really great for beginners. We'll be replicating a piece of concept art from Sleeping Beauty, originally made by Ivan Earl, and that's on July 10th. All the info is in the description below. They're super fun. I've done a bunch over the last year, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I am also going to say very quickly here that this piece is inspired by Pride Month. We're in Pride Month, yay, and that's something to celebrate. So I decided to do Ursula, who was inspired by my all-time favorite drag queen, Divine. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but I'm just going to talk about this background here. I'm creating a vignette using my flathead brush, and Lorelay does these lovely rough-edged vignettes that are very reminiscent of mid-century illustrations. And when I say a rough edge, you can see it's got this sort of dry brush effect around the edges. So you really get the sense that, this shape was created quickly and sort of has spontaneity and a lot of energy to it. So to do that, I mixed up my gouache a little thicker than usual, and then just allowed my brush to create that dry brush by easing up on the pressure just a little bit. So I start with the center part, and as I get to the edges, there's less paint on my brush, and I ease up on the pressure, and you get these great textures. I'm also using watercolor paper that's cold pressed, so it has a texture to it as well. It does work with illustration board or hot pressed, but not as nicely if you want to get that texture. I've added a lot more magenta and a bit more white to create these swoosh effects, this sort of what else can you call it but a swoosh? It's what gives the centerpiece, which is Ursula, a sense of movement, that she's sort of spinning around in the water, which she does a lot of in the movie. She does a lot of spinning and dancing, and she's an octopus, so she's got those lovely tentacles that swoosh around. So a lot of movement, and I'm just bringing in a little bit more modeling there. So I didn't mix up my magenta with that purple too thoroughly. I wanted to let it be a little bit streaky. And now we're going to mix up the color here for Ursula's top half of her body, which is this light ultramarine blue. So it's ultramarine blue mixed with some white, just a tiny bit of magenta in there. And as I paint her in, let's talk about Ursula. Ursula is such a great character, so powerful and confident and scary, but in the best possible way. And I mentioned she was inspired, or her whole character, the look, the way she moved, was all inspired by Divine. Now, there's a few different stories that I've come across when doing research. One story states that Rob Minkoff, who was the animator who first designed this character, that he had already designed her. He tried one where she had this pink mohawk and she was really skinny, and it didn't really, no one was very excited about it. But then he tried one where she was a little bit more voluptuous and had the shorter blonde white hair. And then Howard Ashman, who was working as a producer and writer, he was like, yeah, go in that direction. That reminds me of Divine. Howard Ashman is from Baltimore, where Divine, whose name is actually Glenn, or was Glenn Milstead. Unfortunately, Glenn passed away in, I think, 1987 or 88. Yeah, Howard Ashman, who was from Baltimore and knew who Divine was, said, yes, go in that direction. And here's Divine, and check Divine out. And, let's really lean into that. So that's what happened, according to some sources. Other sources say that Rob Minkoff was, getting all of the inspiration from Divine originally, that's where he got his original inspiration from. And then Howard just encouraged that. So either way, if you know who Divine is, I'm going to put a picture up here, then you know that Ursula is basically Divine. The way Ursula moves, the way Ursula sounds, the makeup, the high arched eyebrows, the shock of blonde wild hair, and then of course the gorgeous voluptuous body that moves with so much grace and so much confidence. So that's Ursula. And as I also mentioned, that it's Pride Month. So I thought, well, what better character to focus on? And this was a request. I had quite a few people ask that I tried to do a piece by this artist, Lorelay Bove, who's originally from Spain, moved to LA when she was 14 and then went to Cal Arts, graduated in, I believe, 2007. Or was it 2014? Oh, shoot. Anyway, when she graduated, same year, I think it was 2014, she ended up working at Disney, which was her dream. And then she created work for the Legacy collection. So I believe that's what this piece was for. Not the original movie, but for collections afterwards, things like album covers and the like. So that is Lorelay. I don't know a lot about her, but I will learn more because I will be doing more pieces of her work. Her work is incredible, very mid-century inspired, but also with more of a painterly look. So you can see here what I'm doing is I just did the hair with white, and the body has that light ultramarine blue and white with a little bit of magenta, and then that darker blue outline, these little blue eyes that have some cyan in them. But you'll notice that the piece is a combination of the mid-century sort of flat shapes, flat planes of color, but then also more of a painterly look, which we see sort of happening in the 70s. Like think of artists like Ralph McQuarrie as opposed to someone like Mary Blair from the 50s and 60s. We get into more of a painterly impressionistic look. So those two combined is really what Lorelay is so amazing at, is just creating these sort of mid-century pieces that also have, or mid-century inspired pieces that also have a painterly look. And she works in gouache. Okay, so back to the painting. I'm creating this sort of aqua color for the eels, the henchmen that sort of are always circling around Ursula, these adorable eels. Who knew eels could be so cute? And this color is made by mixing together cyan, which is a cool blue, closer to green on the color wheel. And then we have some primary yellow and some white, mixing those together, making these adorable eels. And this is where I'm going to talk about my favorite brush that I talk about in every single video, this number 6. In this case, I'm using an Artist's Loft brush. The brand isn't too important. I think what's more important is finding a nice synthetic sable or Kolinsky sable brush. Number 6, you get a great size brush that has a very pointy tip, so you can do detailed work, but you can also hold a lot of paint on your brush. And for these little guys, this brush is perfect because if I, ease up on the pressure, I get a pointier, thinner line, but then as I press down, I get the exact shape of the eel head. So it's just it's a great brush for everything. What can I say? I'm going to be buried with this brush in my hand. Bury me under a tree with a Kolinsky sable number 6 in my hand. I'll be happy. Okay. Details on the face. The face turned out fine. I mean, the original piece is just so loose and fun that really I didn't have to worry too much about things being precise. I'm mixing up some black and yellow here with a little bit of that turquoise mix, adding a tiny bit more cyan so that I can put these details on the eels and the inside of the mouth there. And just, I say this again in almost every video, but if you mix yellow with black, you get a really nice green because black has a blue bias. And now we're going to do these little eyeballs, which are adorable. And next up is well, we're going to be doing her octopus body. And I loved painting this part. This was a lot of fun because you get to do, again, that combination of these sort of more solid shapes, planes of color, and then that more gestural, swooshy, painterly stroke. So here we go. So I'm pressing down quite thick, and then as I move to the outer edge of the tentacle, I ease up on the pressure and do a little swoosh. So I love the swoosh, and it gets that nice dry brush effect, but also has this sort of gesture that feels like she's moving. Like it's got great energy. And just not having as much water mixed in with the gouache helps with that. When you're doing something that has more of this kind of gestural, painterly look, you really don't want to have to do too many coats because you'll lose that spontaneity in the mark. So I have thicker paint, but then in some areas where it's more of a flat plane of the black, like where it's not dry brush, I can do a second coat just to make it more opaque. And of course, then I'm like, okay, her butt has to be a bit bigger. We need to give her more belly, get those boobs a little bit rounder, like, just fill her out a little bit because she's got a full, beautiful body. And yeah. Oh, okay. And then we're doing the underside of the tentacles here. I love tentacles. Anyone else have a thing for tentacles? Okay. I'm going to talk now about Ursula a little more because I did learn in my research that Ginger Minge, who pretty much dominated RuPaul's Drag Race for a few seasons, Ginger was inspired to be a drag queen because of Ursula. Ginger said the first movie they ever saw was Little Mermaid in theaters, first movie in theaters, and that when they saw Ursula come on the scene, that they thought she was the most beautiful creature they had ever seen, the most gorgeous creature. So that was the inspiration for Ginger to become a drag queen. She said she couldn't become a sea witch, so the next option was a drag queen. I thought that was pretty cool. And we've got these little bubbles that we're bringing in now. These were really fun to do with the tip of my number 6, getting in some very quick bubbles. I love how rough these are. Again, these concept pieces or color key pieces are just so quickly done that the energy is really great. I was also going to mention that Divine was considered to be the voice for Ursula, but as I also mentioned, unfortunately, Divine passed away. Glenn Milstead passed away before they were able to do that. So then the job went to Pat Carroll, who did an incredible job of voicing Ursula. And last but not least, we're getting these suckers in here. Actually, this isn't the last step because after the suckers, we have to give those eels their little eyeballs. So first, in the center of the suckers, I have a darker purple going in there. And then we're going to get in there and give these little, what are the eels' names? I can't remember. But there they go. Boop, 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 boop. And look, and they're just staring at Ursula with so much love. And there we go. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to give Ursula a boop, and that's that. So hope you all have a wonderful Pride Month. Go watch The Little Mermaid and check out some of John Waters' films and enjoy Divine. Bye.